So commemorations took place around the world today to mark the one-year anniversary of Hamas's sickening October the 7th attack that resulted in the deaths of more than 1,100 Israelis. But a shock new survey has revealed that 1 in 10 young Brits are sympathetic to Hamas. The report by the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism also found that 1 in 8 18 to 24-year-olds does not believe the reports from survivors of the October 7th attacks. It comes after tens of thousands of pro-Palestine protesters marched through London over the weekend, including the former Scottish First Minister Humza Yousaf. Now, some protesters even brandishing banners in the support of the terror group Hezbollah. Police eventually made 17 arrests. Tonight, I am asking, does Britain have a terror problem? Let me know your thoughts. Go to gbnews.com/your say. Tweet me at gbnews while you're there. Go and vote in our poll online right now. Going head-to-head on this, our member of the Revolutionary Communist Party is Fred Weston, and the Senior Research Fellow at the Henry Jackson Society, Barak. Chaps, thank you very much. Great to have you both in the studio as well. Barak, I'll start with you. When you look at stats like that, especially amongst the younger people, do you think we do have a homegrown terror problem there?
I think it's. I think we have to first understand the incubator for what ultimately is terrorism. So when you've got social media, which is the virtual equivalent of people graffitiing on public toilets, all right? On the back of that, foreign-sponsored disinformation efforts by Iran, by Russia, and then you have woke progressives, add that to the mix, that want to strip back the institutions of the country. They hate the identity of the country, right? And this isn't only in Britain, it's across the West, US and Europe. Then you've got an incubator not only for useful idiots, but for terrorism as well.
OK, a strong start. Fred, do you have any concerns that 1 in 10 of 18 to 24-year-olds basically support Hamas?
Well, talking about disinformation, is it disinformation to state that 42,000 Palestinians have been killed in 12 months? Is it disinformation to say that 100,000 have been injured, of which 25% will remain permanently...
I understand, but you're not answering the question. You just talked about something else, which is fine, but that's not why you're here. So do you have a concern that 1 in 10 young people are sympathetic towards Hamas?
I don't have a concern because I don't believe that 10% of the youth are terrorists. What the truth is, a large number of young people are very angry at what they are seeing, at what they're seeing on the TV screens every day. Crimes are being committed in Gaza, Lebanon, and throughout the Middle East by a state which, rather than negotiate, wants war. Even Netanyahu, the latest behavior, all his behavior throughout the whole year has been to do everything possible to avoid negotiations, to free the hostages. To the point that even you were showing it on your screens in Israel, a huge number of people protesting at the fact that Netanyahu behaves in a way which is not going to get the hostages released.
Right. So I'll come back to you on this, but how do you react to that, Barak, that when we see these figures, that doesn't necessarily translate into the idea that 1 in 10 young people could essentially go on to be terrorists or terrorist sympathisers?
No, but they will hold the views that will serve as a social context for terrorism to emanate from. So, when you have something very, very absurd like Quiz for Palestine, right? So you're going to be having gays on the left that aren't necessarily going to be doing terrorism, but they are going to be sharing the same views as Islamists that would.
OK. I do wonder as well, Fred, when we see this age demographic, so there are some other stats as well, actually. I think the Henry Jackson Society actually conducted these a good few months ago, which appeared to suggest that those born in Britain were more likely to have extremist views than people who had come from abroad here from Middle Eastern countries. Does that not concern you? Maybe a point that potentially multiculturalism or integration there has failed?
No, it doesn't. You see, I look at the bigger picture. What is causing this scenario? To go back to the situation, you can't discuss this without discussing what's happening in the Middle East. You cannot discuss it without looking at the crimes that are being committed there. You can't discuss it without considering that first Sunak and the Tories and now Labour and Starmer are supporting the war of Netanyahu. They are watching thousands be butchered in the Middle East, thousands of Palestinians being killed, hospitals being bombed, schools being destroyed. Now they're spreading the war to Lebanon, and Netanyahu has said, we will do to Lebanon what we did to Gaza. How do you expect young people
to be sympathetic towards Hamas? Because it's okay, obviously, to be sympathetic towards the plight of people who are suffering and who people like yourself, feel are being unfairly treated and killed. But it's another thing to be sympathetic towards an actual terror group, isn't it?
But listen,
I mean, Hamas are terrorists, aren't they?
Hamas. Listen, we're revolutionary communists. I'm a communist. I don't believe in individual terror as a method. I don't.
But is that what Hamas are? Terrorists, yeah.
Hamas has used its methods, which we don't agree with at all.
But are they terrorists? You see, this is the same kind of response that James Corbyn had.
Jeremy
Corbyn had, that he was unable to call Hamas out for being what they are. Now, the people who are protesting en masse, they don't really care about the Palestinians, because they don't care about the genocide that's taking place in Sudan. They don't care about Syria. They hate Jews more than they care about the Palestinians. So it's just really an excuse. None of them are advocating for Hamas to release hostages. None of them do that. None of them say, look, what the IRGC are doing, what Hamas is doing, what Hezbollah is doing, are crimes against humanity. No one cares about Hamas using human shields, and they also don't care about the over 60,000 Israelis that have been refugees from their own home.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
if just out of interest, if someone wanted to join the Revolutionary Communist Party, and they said to you when they were, I don't know if you have membership papers or whatever, they said to you as they were signing on, oh, by the way, I support Hamas.
Well, I would discuss with them and say why we don't support those methods. We don't support those methods. But you see, this discussion is designed not to concentrate on the real issues. Because I just heard somebody here say, people on those demonstrations hate Jews. I've been on many of those demonstrations. I didn't see any Jew haters. I actually were on the demonstration with many Jews who support the cause of the Palestinian people. It's completely false, the picture that you're depicting.
Well, what I will say is that whilst I do think it is completely false to suggest that every single person there, which I'm not sure you're trying to do, every single person there is a rabid anti-Semite, fine, absolutely. I mean, there is Jew hatred, and in fact, at 10 o'clock, we're actually playing a bit of that out on television so people can see what happens. So look, you can't have it both ways, either of you, really, in that regard. But you say the real issue. I suppose it depends what you think the real issue is. Now, for me personally, living here, I would argue that the most pressing issue for me right now is whether or not we have a tidal wave of homegrown terrorists who are about to come through. So that's why I'm focusing on these 1 in 10 young people here in Britain sympathetic towards Hamas. You obviously don't really think that will translate into terrorism.
There is no such tidal wave. There is no such tidal wave. When you talk about terrorism, I can ask a question. Is it terrorism to explode walkie-talkies and pagers to people in Lebanon?
No.
It's not terrorism?
I was actually very...
So you think that's not terrorism?
I think until now Netanyahu's been quite soft. I think now he's finding his stride. I think it's a fantastic thing. When you've got thousands of Hezbollah members that have their beepers and walkie-talkies being, blown up, I just was hoping that it wasn't only in their hand, but they were holding it against their heads. That would
so you're supporting the war.
It's a fantastic
You're
thing.
supporting Netanyahu.
Just like I would be supportive against striking ISIS, I would be supportive of, the dismantling of...
So the scenes of children being blown to bits don't bother you at all?
Any terrorist infrastructure, whether it be Hamas, whether it be Hezbollah, whether it be IRGC, I would like to see them all targeted. And I question your moral compass.
My moral compass?
If you don't at all, if you draw an equivalent between terrorists and civilians.
What Israel is doing is terror on a grand scale.
Against
42,000 Palestinians have been butchered.
But even that is disinformation.
Oh, it's disinformation now.
When you don't place that in a context of who those 42,000 Palestinians are.
Can I just add another
detail? You've got
detail?
5 seconds.
West Bank, right? Armed groups of settlers terrorize Palestinians, to expel them from their land. They're stealing their land now.
Guys, we're going to knock it on that. It's a time issue. It's not a comment on either of your two performance. We're going to have to move on, I'm afraid. But thank you. And